children due to the guns and the carnage and the lawlessness unleashed by those states. I move on. This is not normal. Not only is it not normal, it is internationally embarrassing and delegitimizing to the United States.
In the 70s, I attended a high school, large rural school. Virtually every vehicle in the parking lot was a pickup truck, and almost every one had a rifle or a shotgun on the back glass and a pistol under the seat. And we didn't have school shootings.
Welcome back to MAGA News Central. For years, Americans have been told that more gun laws are the answer to rising crime. Politicians in Washington repeat the same talking points, media outlets repeat the same narrative, and activists like AOC continue pushing for more restrictions on law-abiding gun owners. But during one unforgettable exchange, an Army veteran stood up and challenged the entire premise, not with a speech, not with a political slogan, but with one simple question. If criminals ignore gun laws, why are politicians so focused on restricting citizens who already obey them?
Mr. Higgins. Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioner Gramaglia, looking at your presented statement, sir. Say you support confiscating guns from individuals determined to be a threat to themselves or others. Determined to be. So by this legislation my colleagues are putting forth, my understanding of the letter of that law, which I 1,000% oppose, as would our founding fathers, the letter of that law is an anonymous tip from a citizen. So if this was law, Commissioner, would you go to your neighbor's home and confiscate his legally owned weapons, a man that was not under criminal investigation nor under arrest? Would you do it?
The red flag laws would...
That's a yes or no, brother. I got 5 minutes to make an hour-and-a-half statement here.
It's more than a yes or no answer.
We'll move on then. If you cannot say yes, you would confiscate weapons from an American citizen that was subject to this law that my colleagues intend to push through this Congress, then you said in your statement that you would confiscate those weapons if an American was determined to be, your quote, a threat to themselves or others. According to that law, determined to be is defined by an anonymous tip that an American citizen is a threat to themselves or others. You're a police commissioner, a thin blue line brother, sworn to uphold the Constitution, and you're saying you'd seize those weapons. I see that as a problem. I'm going to bring us back in time to World War II. America's population, 140 million. 15 million American men came home from World War II with deep scars and significant skills. They bore the invisible wounds of war. And there was weapons everywhere. We'll talk about mental challenge. My father was one of those men who was a Navy pilot in World War II. He came back from the war and built his family. I'm the 7th of his 8 children. I was born in 1961. We had guns everywhere. There was virtually no regulation. Any child in the 50s could buy a weapon from any seller if Daddy sent them with the money. We didn't have mass shootings. It wasn't until 1968 in America that serial numbers were even required on weapons sold in this country. You order weapons through the Sears catalog by the mail. In the 70s, I attended a high school, large rural school. Virtually every vehicle in the parking lot was a pickup truck, and almost every one had a rifle or a shotgun on the back glass and a pistol under the seat. And we didn't have school shootings. 1979, I began college. One of the jobs I had to work my way through college was as a carpenter. We restored historical buildings. We had to determine in the process of that work what was the original cuts of these homes, residential homes built 75, 85, 100 years ago. You could tell by the saw cut if it was a mechanical cut, an electric cut, or a hand cut. By such observations, we knew exactly how that house was originally built. And to my amazement as a young man, beginning college in Louisiana, working, to my amazement, you know what I discovered, Madam Chair? You know what these houses did not have that were built 100 years ago in cities in America? You know what they did not have, Commissioner? Locks. Locks. Now I ask you all, what happened to that country, man? A country where homes were built in cities with no locks. A country where guns were everywhere and virtually not regulated at all. Where millions of Americans, 14 million Americans came back. It's 11% of the population at the time after World War II with incredible skills of war and weapons of war, as you called them, everywhere. But we didn't have mass shootings. And here we sit today where an entire once proud Democratic Party is presenting unbelievably unconstitutional laws to press upon our nation, and we have a police commissioner that says he would go home to home and confiscate legally owned weapons if he got a tip. Madam Chair, I yield my speech, but I will not yield my opposition to these unconstitutional laws.
The gentleman's time has expired.
That question immediately changed the tone of the conversation, because suddenly the debate wasn't about political talking points. It was about common sense, and it put the spotlight directly on a problem millions of Americans see every day. The Army veteran didn't focus on hunters, he didn't focus on sports shooters, and he didn't focus on responsible gun owners. He focused on violent criminals, gang members, repeat offenders, career criminals who continue terrorizing communities despite the countless laws already on the books. Then he pointed to cities that have become symbols of the gun control debate, places where strict regulations already exist, yet violent crime continues to plague neighborhoods year after year. His argument was straightforward. If tougher laws are the solution, why are some of the most heavily regulated cities still struggling with violence? It's a question many politicians try to avoid, because it forces them to explain why new restrictions are constantly proposed while existing laws often fail to stop criminals. And for many viewers, the Veterans Challenge exposed a major weakness in the gun control argument. President Obama responded by defending measures such as expanded background checks and other regulations designed to prevent firearms from ending up in dangerous hands. He compared gun regulations to traffic laws, arguing that safety standards can help reduce tragedies and save lives. Supporters of that position believe government has a responsibility to create safeguards before violence occurs. But here's where the disagreement became impossible to ignore. The veteran wasn't asking whether responsible ownership should exist. He wasn't arguing against public safety. He was asking whether the government's focus was aimed at the wrong target, and many Americans watching felt that question never received a direct answer. Instead of focusing on criminals who repeatedly break the law, critics argue that politicians often place new burdens on citizens who haven't committed any crimes at all. That's why this exchange continues to resonate years later. At its core, this wasn't just a debate about firearms. It was a debate about freedom, responsibility, and trust. The veteran represented a viewpoint shared by millions of Americans: protect constitutional rights, enforce existing laws, punish violent offenders, and stop treating law-abiding citizens like they're the problem. Meanwhile, progressive politicians and activists, including AOC, continue pushing for broader regulations, arguing that tighter controls are necessary to reduce violence. The American people remain divided, but one thing is certain: the veteran forced a conversation that many in Washington would rather avoid, because the central question remains unanswered. Do safer communities come from restricting lawful citizens, or from aggressively targeting the criminals who commit the violence? That's the debate America is still having today. What do you think? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and if you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for MAGA News Central. We'll see you in the next one.